So we got somebody joining us.
Hey, what's up, VJ?
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. Alan VJ is a buddy of mine. Used to be my neighbor up in Iowa.
All right. Okay.
So
Okay.
he actually had a Zoom already, so he let us use his Zoom connection.
Well, thank you, bro.
It just made everything a little bit more streamlined than what we were about to do. So
it's BJ. Did I hear that right?
yep.
BJ. Hey,
V,
BJ. I'm
V.
Alan.
V is in veteran.
VJ.
Yes,
VJ. Okay. Okay.
I didn't want my name to be coming up because I'm recording this. Hopefully, Karen will tell all that, but I didn't want my name to come up because it's your event. So I'm going to change it to Grace Relations.
You thought of everything, man.
And I'll let you. I think we're all set. Karen, I'm going to mute myself, and then
Okay.
you said you wanted to play some music. Let's see if that works. Okay.
Yeah, it was working. I put it back on. Yeah, Alan and I started talking, so I'll put it back on while everybody comes up. So Alan, give us a moment.
No problem.
What's up, LaShawn?
Hi guys, how's everybody doing? Good to see you all.
Hey everyone.
Karen, you're now the host, okay?
Crandon, is that your office?
Hold on, what'd you say, Krista?
Are you at your office?
I'm in my office at my house.
I am so jealous of that bookshelf. Oh my gosh.
It's wall to wall. You can't even see it all.
Oh, that's awesome.
With floating shelves. So yeah, that's the project we did like 2 years ago. We converted the front porch into this, and then the other side is like a little foyer to enter the house. So yeah, had to get all this stuff because most of this stuff was in boxes, and it's like, well, I can't do anything with it in boxes. So
Right.
yeah. So
That's
this is
awesome.
a custom little project. BJ, when I was looking, it had Alan as host. It still has Alan as host.
Alan is not capable of handling that responsibility.
Sorry, it's my bad. Let me take over the power, Alan. I'm gonna take it away from you and give it to Crane. There you go.
I'm power hungry. Please don't give me any rope to hang myself. I'm not good with that. I'm the bully of the group, so you may have to.
Did it work, Crandon?
Huh?
For Crandon, did it work? Should be the host now.
Got a few more people coming. All right, we got still the same people. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Let me see if I can get some people in the inbox and see what's the hold up. What's up, man? You got the link? Asking for an ID number. I said, how you doing? Okay. Go back to the link.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Doing good, doing well, doing real good.
You
The
sleep
sun
okay?
is shining.
Good.
We're in Houston. It's really hot, really, really hot.
You're in Houston, you said?
Yeah.
What's the temperature up to during the day there now?
Ooh, like close to 100 right now. Yeah, it's close to it. It's climbing like each day, going up and up. Yeah. Yesterday, I think it was like 97 degrees. Yeah.
And what's the
So
humidity?
it's pretty high. I don't know exactly the number, but it's always really high. Especially after it rains, it gets worse. Like stuffy, like a sauna. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in San Antonio for a year, and I
Oh yeah.
remember visiting Houston, and it was even like heavier,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Hey, quick question. Did anybody, when you guys popped on, did it ask you for a meeting ID number?
I think when you use the link, it overwrites the need for the password.
That's what I thought. But somebody just called me needing the password. So,
Well, I have the password written down
okay.
because it gives you it when it goes to your email.
Okay.
So the password, the ID, you need the ID or the password?
Give me 1 second. Let me get to that person.
Okay.
I copied it to my clipboard here.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should be about ready to go with that. I'm not gonna hold y'all too long waiting on people, so we can get in here. Hopefully they'll pop in while we're working on this.
Made it in finally. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. There he is.
Thanks for being patient.
Yes, sir. And let me see if I have any more messages, and then we'll probably dive on in this.
I don't think I've been on a Zoom call with this many people yet. And now I totally get the Brady Bunch thing.
Oh yeah. It can get crazy. I've been on huge ones, and so you have like a list of people, and yeah. All right.
I had not thought about the Brady Bunch thing. That is funny.
When the quarantine stuff started, they like a lot of the memes had those sorts of things wrapped up in it. It was funny.
I think I saw that. Well, I think we got a good group. Oh, Josh popped in. Where are you, Josh?
Got no video.
Hey, bro.
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Doing pretty good. We're about to get kicked off here. I think if this is not everybody, this is enough to get going and have a good talk. So let's dive right in. Let me first start off and just thank you guys for being a part of this. I can honestly say that everybody on this thing, in particular the ones that I've known for a while, but even Miss Dina, who I met recently, is somebody that I can admire in some way or the other. I've got academic scholars, Bible scholars, overall just good people, business people, et cetera, on here. And so just honored to have all of you guys on a call and wanting to just really make some strides towards some progress that we need to happen. And so I think you guys can be key in that and have a lot of value to add to it. So thank you. And let's get going. VJ has a question. Hey, everybody, meet VJ. He's our tech guy today. In that VJ is a friend of mine. He used to be my neighbor back at Iowa State, and he had a Zoom connection the pro level, so the fancy Zoom connection, and he lent it to us so that we didn't have to pay and or figure out some complex technical solution. So
Appreciate it.
very thankful for him for that. And so
Yes, I was just going to say, I am going to be in the background, and I'll mute myself and I'll now pause my video. But just a quick thing for everyone. Because Karen wanted to record this, and it'll be helpful if we muted everyone and only one person speak at a time, so that we don't have echoes. And so anytime you want to talk, you want to make sure that your mic is on. But otherwise, either Karen or I will be co-hosting it, but I'll be in the background. I'll turn my video off and everything. But if there's anything you all need, let me know. And any questions about Zoom? I don't know if people probably have used it by now, because we've been in quarantine land for 3 months now. So, okay, I'll let you all know and have a great conversation. So, and Karen, I'll give you back the power, because I keep taking it and giving it back to you. I'll make you a co-host, so that way. There you go.
all right. Shoot, I may need you to keep it since this is my first time hosting a Zoom. I've been on very many, but never hosted one. So this is cool. But let's ask this question just to kind of get the conversation going instead of going from 0 to 100. And so this comes from one of the resources. I'll show you guys three cool resources that I have. Two of them I literally just got like this week, and they're from, this one is What Lies Between Us, and that's the book that I kind of used for the guidelines that I posted in the group by Dr. Lucretia Carter Berry. She is the daughter-in-law of this guy who just released this book like in the past month or two, Navigating Diversity, and it's actually more centered around church congregations and segregation and the racial things that lie in there. And so that's a really cool resource. And so the other one that I got at a conference. It's called Speak Up at School. And so some things that it has in there, it's from the Teaching Tolerance group. They have some actual practical things that you can do and say when some of those uncomfortable issues come up about diversity, where you can actually be an active intervention person when those things happen around you. You may not know exactly what to do or what to say. It has some kind of suggestions, some real life situations that happen in there. And so back to the question that I was going to ask, says typically, can everybody hear me fine? Okay. Typically, what prompts your thoughts or discussions about race? And so let's dive in there, and then we'll get to those questions that I put on the Facebook group that you guys have already.
So for us, or me, typically it's usually centered around the dinner table with the wife and the kids, discussing what negative negatively has happened in social media or in the world that day. And that's how it usually starts, and then it continues on. And we, at least on my end, I reach out to my African American friends and brothers and say, hey, how do I help it on my end to help this systemic issue go away? Is there a different way to see this? Help me understand that.
Cool. I appreciate that. I didn't hear anybody else. Let me turn my camera on. Hi everybody, I'm Josh. Yes, baby. I'm currently
A father.
with my son right now, so I just have to give y'all that disclaimer. I do a lot of work with him and teaching him. Currently, he's learning about space and the periodic table and that kind of stuff. But anyways,
Yeah, Josh.
Appreciate it. Currently, I guess we'll say what drives my interest in this topic, or I kind of forgot the question, but I'll say yes, baby. I tell you what, I'm gonna come back to me in just a second. Let me get a little bit free. Sorry.
Got another dad on the camera.
So
See.
I'll say, to answer your question, what sparks me is this has sort of kind of been our reality, sort of passed down from generation to generation. So even though I'm tired of addressing it, because I've heard it, my mom has heard it, their mom has talked about it. It's just the reality of, talking to my kids about it, because, it affects a lot of things around us. And so I don't want them to be walking in the world ignorant that people may have an issue with them because of their skin color, And I want to let them know that they are affirmed, they are loved, they are valued, they are made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. So it's important for me to tell them about the reality, but also affirm their value and worth in Christ. So I lead with the biblical worldview, but then I also give them the reality and how to apply it in the context that we live in today. So, yeah.
All right.
For me, my family dynamic is really crazy. Yeah, I'm at the coffee shop right now because all 9 of my kids are about to start waking up. So I thought I'd better run up here to get some privacy and some quiet. But when I shared on my very long intro, they made fun of me. He was making fun of for my 15-minute introduction. But I was raised in a home where hatred was foundational. That doesn't even make sense. But my father taught me to absolutely hate anyone who doesn't look like me. And so from a very early age, I just knew that couldn't be right. I mean, it just didn't make sense. And so for a lifetime, I was trying to overcome that and defeat that and break that generational curse in my family. And the Lord has blessed us with a very culturally diverse home with just over the years, past 13 years that we've been foster parents. And now we've adopted 5 children. And, I praise God that my children don't look the same, and so for us, it's always a reality because when we're out in public, we get strange looks. When I take my youngest son, Mr., to baseball practice, we get strange looks, and it forces us to have those conversations, which is good because, but this is what causes us to be able to, or have to have these conversations. And as I shared with Crandon, although I think I'm sympathetic toward these issues my whole life, now God has put me in a place where I can truly empathize. I can understand better. And so these are the things. So it's a daily reality for us now. which is wonderful.
When it kind of dries up, I'll probably just move to the next question, but I do want to give everybody time to think and, formulate your thoughts and your words, but I don't want it to just kind of sit here either. So you guys take your time and think and process, and I'll try to gauge it. I'm hoping for the most part, just, while you guys continue to think about that one, just kind of put my role out there. I'm hoping for the most part to be a silent partner of sorts, and just try to moderate and keep things flowing. I have a lot to say myself, as anybody, and most of you guys know that I can get going and talk. So I don't want to take over at all. I want to let you guys do that. But every here and there, I'll probably, if something just really needs to be said, or I really feel like I can add something, I'll pop in. But I'll try to stay in the background as much as possible. All right.
Yeah. All right. So
There he is.
yeah, I'm Josh again. I guess the kind of what drove me in this space was growing up in an area and a time and where I was dealing with like racism, getting called the N-word, and getting kids pushing me in the ditch and calling me and spitting at me, and things like that. Growing up, and then having the family history where you hear the stories of people that went through terrible things that people should have never had to go through, firsthand from my parents, my grandparents, and seeing the legacy of that happen to today, and just having the knowledge from reading about it, and knowing how to get to some solutions. And I'm looking at this guy right here, and I'm like, I don't want this to be the same type of world that I lived in, and my parents and their parents and their parents lived in, that this guy lives in. But at least I got to do my part. So that's kind of why I'm active in these issues.
Hi everyone, I'm Chi Ibekwe. I would say, just to piggyback off of that, and what everyone else has said is, it's just kind of the reality, that I've lived in my whole life. But about 3.5 years ago, my wife got involved in this organization called Be the Bridge, and it specifically dealt with racial reconciliation, within the church, and from a Christian perspective. But it was very intense in readings and experiences, and it kind of not only opened my eyes to the depth of the systemic racism in the world, but also encouraged me to start to do what I could do to start to address it and whatnot. And culminated with all the things that are going on right now, it's really opened up a lot of crucial conversations with friends and family members, and people I know, strangers, and I've seen a lot of healing take place, and a lot of encouraging things happening, and people's eyes being open, and ears being open, and hearts being open. And so we have our work cut out for us, and a lot of work ahead, but I am encouraged with all the things that I see and hear positively that are going on.
Hey, now a quick question for you. Did you have people join your group that you knew were biased towards Black people when you started to Build a Bridge?
Well, yes, some of them were.
Ready, Jack, go is on.
Sorry, my daughter. Okay, I'll change. Yes, some of them. It was cool. Like some of them, I think everyone thought that they were non-racist or non-biased. But as we began to dig in to the root of the matter, pretty much everyone realized that they were a party to racism in some form or fashion. And the goal was not just become a non-racist, but anti-racist, speak out against it. And so everyone grew, every single person grew, even those that were, like us, like African American, like us, like we realized, oh man, there's, things that we've been ignoring, things that we can do, address, even at the risk of ruffling some feathers. And so it kind of gave that kind of boldness to pursue reconciliation, even at the cost of temporary discomfort.
Good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because we thought about it, but we weren't sure.
Question, Chi. Did they use the term implicit bias in that? I don't know if you
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, they did.
Okay.
You learn about terms like right fragility. I mean, just like it was very well organized. So,
yeah.
I mean, on an educational level, there was a lot of reading. There was a lot of contemplating, like our spheres of influence. Like I said, it was very eye-opening. And we, even to this day, like we encourage our friends to look into it, especially now that people are asking questions of, what can I do, or what can I read, or where can I, we always want them to be the bridge. They have a lot of good curriculum and whatnot. So.
Okay. All right, guys. That's been good. Let's hop to the actual questions that you guys knew about. And the first one I feel kind of ties into this one, so I'll probably skim past it. I'll read it out because it was on there, but we'll probably skim past it pretty quickly. It says, how important is conversation and relationship in this, and what does success look like? And in this means how important is conversation and relationship in this type of dialogue, and what does success look like? What are we looking to accomplish? And I'll give a moment for that if somebody wants to say something particular, and then I'll go on to the next one.
I know Dina had her hand up earlier, so I just want to acknowledge that she might want to say something if it's tied to what we were just talking about.
Come on in, Ms. Dina. I missed that. Thank you, Krista.
It also looked like she was driving, so it might not be a safe time for her to talk right now.
We can always come back.
I'll piggyback this to what I was going to say with the last one. I think it's critical that we have these conversations, but I think it's also critical that we don't always other these conversations, and that we have these conversations within ourselves. I think that's where the root of the healing has to happen, and it's not in a lot of our trauma of systemic racism is internalized. That takes, it looks different depending on what privilege we garner from what we look like. So the last, I don't know, I started a doctorate degree in 2005, and I specifically look at issues of social justice and systemic oppression, and on that journey have had to do a lot of internal thinking, right, and really look at how my own personal history with my family extends itself to my relationships with other people. Particularly recently, a lot of what I'm fighting with within myself is abandonment issues and issues of feeling invisible, and how that is also tied to my knowledge that because of what I look like, I am always going to be at least a little bit untrustworthy to folks who don't look like me. And that's something that I've had to just come to terms with and understand, and be okay with, because I care enough about my friends and chosen family who don't look like me to want them to be safe, and no matter what that looks like. Now that doesn't mean I don't have conversations like this. It doesn't mean, right, like we still engage, treat everybody like family, but it requires that introspection of how am I furthering this, and what work do I need to do within me in order to make this better. So in my house, my partner and I have a lot of those conversations of like, you know, what are we doing as people, individuals, and also what are we doing as white folks collectively to not unlock and let go of colonization and white supremacy. So this is my academic background. This is my life's work. You know, I worked in TRIO long enough, since 2001, and the vast majority of my students never looked like me, right? So these are the things that I've just had to learn in order to be better at what was my passion and my calling. Hopefully that answers it.
All right. You mentioned, I was trying to say this for last, but you mentioned systemic racism. But you also mentioned, you know, how you look and how that affects people who don't look like you. So let's hop in at that fourth question that says, do Black people see every white person as racist? And also, do white people see every Black person as inferior? That was posed by another panelist. And so I want to address that and kind of get into that past the obvious answer, you know, past the obvious answer, and kind of get into some deeper thought about that. Floor is open.
I'd say specifically for Black people, and I'm not talking about all Black people because I know we're not a monolith, but based upon, I'll say maybe the vast majority, we don't see all white people as racist. But when we're in the context of the broader culture, and which is predominantly white, as far as the systems and everything that come into play are thought about white culture, is white culture. So for Black people, we are wondering if the people that see us who are white, what kind of ideas or thoughts are going through their head about Black people. Even from, I'll say, if you have a nice car, are they wondering, what did you do to get this car? Although they know you work with them, they know you're getting a paycheck, but it's like, how did you obtain that? Or how did you get that house? Or how did, you know? So I don't think Black people think all white people are racist, but I think the system is set up so where Black people are sort of kind of seen as inferior and or suspicious or suspects. How did they get here? And you know, those kind of things. So yeah, I don't think Black people see all white people as racist, but I think there is sort of a blindness that Black people wrestle with. Like, do they really see me as me? Or are they seeing me based upon the stereotypes that are on TV or in magazines or things like that are portrayed in media? So yeah, that's the tension that I think a lot of Black people, the vast majority of us, kind of walk through and try to navigate through in this context of America.
All right, Ms. Dina. Give me a second.
Sorry.
Miss Dina just popped on. Miss Dina, we weren't sure whether you were in a safe spot to talk or not. If you have anything to add or anything that you wanted to say, go ahead and drop that in there. I'm going to get my laptop charger.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can
Hello?
hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I apologize. I had a viewing that I had to do, so I kind of had to step back for a minute. And so I'm not for sure what question you all had asked when I was getting out. It was just talking about why we need to talk about this race and the tension. And from a personal standpoint,
Deanna, you're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Let me try something.
Yeah, you've got some bad signal.
Let me pull over and let me see if I can actually. So, but give me a minute to get to Facebook.
Okay.
I think
Question from my head injured brain.
Do you know what the question? Can you repeat the question? I was having technical difficulty with my device, so I didn't hear.
On that one, I just kind of gave Miss Dina the floor because she's been traveling while we were gone, just so that if she had anything to add in based on what we talked about. So, but the question that we're actually on is, do Black people see every white person as racist? And do white people see every Black person as inferior, etc.? And I had said, past the obvious answer of no, because there's no, no, everybody sees this or whatever. And so we were kind of getting some of those caveats of that question.
If I can speak.
Yep, go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Aaron.
When I was a student in college, I had the most brilliant history professor one could ever have. And we took a class called Civil War. And he taught it it was a very strange way. He taught it from a completely Southern perspective. And I'll never forget the final essay was proving he set up a scenario where it was a Civil War reunion, and a Confederate soldier was sitting across the table from the Union soldier, and the Union soldier leaned across and said, "Too bad we had to whip you boys in the war." And the Southern soldier leaned across and said, "Oh, did you?" And the assignment was to demonstrate that the South really won the war. And what the professor was trying to demonstrate was this problem that we're raising right now, is that it wasn't necessarily a desire to protect the institution of slavery, but it was key. No matter what we do, we keep African Americans subjective to the white race. And as you look back over that period of history, it's easy to see how, at least in the South, and I've lived in Arkansas my entire 51 years, so I don't know what it's like anywhere else. So I speak a lot from ignorance. But it has been my experience, having had that class almost 30 years ago, seeing that the South seems to have worked very hard to maintain that superiority of the white race over the Black race, of anyone of color. And because we're quote unquote more intelligent, in my own history, I've been taught that people of color do not have the intellectual ability to handle leadership. I've been taught that one of the greatest compliments that white people feel like they hand out to people of color is that, when you talk, I don't hear a Black man. I hear it as if that's some kind of wonderful thing to share with someone. So it's been my experience that, you know, yeah, we've been taught that people of color are inferior. And even in my, like, and I'll share a lot about my family. One lady at our church that we were previously serving said, you know, when I see your little boy, I see, yes, he's black on the outside, but on the inside, I can tell that he's white. As if it's some kind of wonderful, why can't my son be who he is, you know? And so it's just it's heartbreaking that we in the South have worked hard to protect that culture. It's evil. Yes, sir.
Hey, Crandon, you got to unmute yourself.
I thought I had done that. I guess I didn't click hard enough. But what I said was, did everybody hear Alan? I said he broke up for a bit in there, and I said I feel like I know what he said because we've had that conversation, but wasn't sure if you guys heard him. Just nod for me if you heard if you feel like you heard everything. Okay. Okay.
I think Brother Mike wanted to say something.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of inner city volunteer work here in Little Rock for like the last 10 years or so. And I don't know if the parents and the kids looked at me as I was a racist white guy just coming in to make myself feel better about what's been happening in the country. But what I do know and what I've been told by the kids and by the parents is like, don't mess with him because he's an angry white guy. And part of that is from the military, because when we teach in the service, I teach y'all listen, and I hadn't gotten away from that aspect yet. I wasn't used to teaching with kids. I was used to teaching with adults. So I can see where that has come from. But once they understood my heart, once I was able to come across and say, hey guys, look, I just want your life to be better. When I would talk with a parent, I would be like, hey, do you want your kids to do better than you are right now? And the answer was always yes. And I said, well, that's what we're here for. We want to help you. We want to help your kids. And once they got that aspect, it truly helped, because not everybody's out to help. Does that make sense? They're just here to get that pat on the back and then move forward. And I've been guilty at looking at some white or some African American men and African American females and going, something's just not quite right there. Usually, and sorry to throw a little bit of shade, but it's usually with the baggy pants and the dreads and things like that. Those things that we see on TV that show the black man or black woman in a negative context, if that makes sense. Sorry, yeah. Okay. So when I see that, my first response is what I get from the TV, but then I have to remind myself, these are people. We're all people. That's a guy, that's a girl, and I need to get to know them on the inside, not just on the outside. So that's been something that I've had to not only teach myself, but I've had to teach others as well. Does that make sense to everybody?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So what I was going to say when you said that, the funny and cool thing that we just got into is that when I moved to Arkansas, when I moved back here about 10 years ago, I had locks. So the dreads that as you call them dreads, I had locks, and they were down here. I've never had hair in my life, but the kicker behind that is I'm from Arkansas, I was living in Iowa. And there were two things that came into play as to why I personally had locks. And those two things were weather and accessibility. And so for me to get a haircut, I had to drive an hour, and she knows what I'm talking about. he may have had a barber because he was in the dorms and stuff, but I was in grad school. I didn't know anybody like that. And so there wasn't really a barber shop in the city that I lived in. The demographics of Iowa when I moved there was 91% white, 5 point some odd percent Asian, 1.8% people who look like me, 1.5 Hispanic, and then the rest was other. So there was less than 2 out of 100 people who looked like me. And so in the city that I was in, I couldn't find a barber or somebody who knew how to cut my hair as a black man, African American, or whatever terminology we want to use. So I would have the barber shop that I found that could give me a good haircut was about an hour away. So I had to drive to another city. It was in kind of maybe like a neighborhood like what you're describing, where I wasn't, necessarily fully comfortable, even though the people looked like me. It was just kind of a rough area. And the price for the haircut was twice what I was used to paying in Arkansas for the same haircut. And I had a really long wait. And in Iowa, the winters are pretty extreme. And so I was fighting with, to get this haircut, I've got to drive like an hour in snow and ice. That was at the time when gas prices were ridiculous, $4 a gallon and stuff like that. And so when I did the math, I'm like, man, this haircut is costing me like 5 hours out of my day and about $50 after I count gas there, the price of the haircut, gas back, and all of that. And so my solution to that was to grow locks. And so the other thing about it was with having, wind chills, of 30 degrees below zero and stuff, the locks actually insulated my head too. That was my other part of my logic. Like, I need some hair to keep heat into my body. And so that's why I had locks. But when I moved to Arkansas, I already knew what I was coming to, be that right, wrong, or indifferent. Some of the stuff that we're talking about, I knew even though I've got an undergraduate degree, even though I've got this master's degree, even though I don't have any, negative affiliations, even though I've done all this good stuff in my life, what somebody's going to see when I walk into a job interview is these locks, and they're going to form their opinion of me right there. They're not going to hear anything that comes out of my mouth. And so that in itself is one of those problems, I believe, that we're talking about. It might get into implicit bias. It might be a whole nother topic, but like, before I ever open my mouth, you've already looked, and, not you, but I knew I've already lost this job when I walk in the door, because I already had my skin color working against me. I already had my gender working against me. And then strike 3 was I had these locks. And so when I knew that I was going to enter the job market, I cut my hair off. So I went from locks to this, like, immediately. I cut them off, and I started shaving my head. And so that's kind of a play off of that, and that's kind of some reasoning for me. Now, some people do it because of culture and other reasons and stuff like that, but for me, it was actually super logical. It wasn't about, oh, I want to have locks so I can look cool. It was like, I want to stay warm because this windshield is about to drain my body of every bit of heat that I have, and it's expensive. And so there we go.
So back to the locks. I'm not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. Like, I've had white friends that have locks. I've got black friends that got locks, and I'm like, so you understand the perception that you're throwing out there, right? This is what you're throwing out there, and I know you better than that. So why? And like you said, it's because one, it kept my head warm. 2, it's the way I like it. And I was like, okay, but you got to get to know the person. I had to get to know the person. They had to get to know me. And I think that's where we stop short, is like, we see the outside and we just stop, and we already know we already believe what this person is.
But with that too, and the thing that we can't quite deal with on this talk, because everybody here is here because they want to be here. And so the problem that you'll run into is the people that's a real problem with, they don't care to get to know me.
Right.
They don't care to get to know the young men that you work with. It's just like, you already, like I said, you already you know, had 2 strikes because of skin color and whatever. But then now you have those. I've made my decision. I know who you are. I don't want to deal with you. I don't care to get to know you, and all of those things. Let me throw this in there too. The stigma thing is not just a race thing, but it could be race driven, as you guys, some of you have talked about, you know, parents and grandparents having these things happen to them or whatever. My mom will be 78 next week. And so my mom grew up in the 40s and the 50s and went through all of this craziness and segregation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of my worst critics on these locks, and one of the people who gave me the hardest time, was my mother. I love her. I love her so much. And she knows that. I'm going to make sure she sees this, because I feel like in certain ways, the fact that I'm on this call with Alan and Mike and Krista and all of you guys, and we're actually trying to talk and work through something, would blow her mind. I didn't tell her I was doing this, but I feel like when she watches it, it's gonna mess her up, because she spent so much time in people hating her and oppressing her, and like she dealt with real deal, you know, segregation and racist stuff. She dealt with real deal stuff that my temperament would not have allowed me to deal with. So I'm thankful for her and everybody who stood in the gap and bridged that. But I'm gonna shut up now. Like I said, I can.
You know, Kanan, go ahead, John. My dad grew up in that same time period as your mom, and he was on the other side of that. You know, and one of my best friends is a man named Jackie Flake, who lives in Fort Smith, and Jackie is African American, and his daddy taught him that we as white people are nothing. We're just all green-eyed devils, and so we both grew up with this hate toward you know, being taught to us. And at one particular time, Jackie was introducing me to his nephew, and it stung. It stung when he introduced us. I don't know what this phrase means, so I don't want to offend anyone. But he said, "This is my brother Alan," and he says, "But he's okay because he's from the dirty South." And I was like, you know, it hurt that he had, like I said, I don't know exactly what that means, but you could see a level of suspicion in this young man's eye until Jackie said that, and then I was acceptable, you know. And I thought, man, isn't it sad we have to live in a society that we have to make those kinds of declarations about our friends in order for our family and friends to accept us. I just found that very, you know, because I had never heard that phrase to start with. Number two, it was a clearinghouse to make sure that I'm all right.
Alan, that is a compliment.
Dina is back, and it looks like she's not muted anymore.
Hello. So I'm just going to, and I'm going to apologize because I know I'm supposed to be on this call because everything has worked against that. So I'm going to not apologize, but I'm going to say that I'm determined to be on this call. So what I have heard, there are a few things that I've heard bits and pieces. And so I kind of went back since I've been kicked off and looked at the questions. And I first want to commend you for having the conversation. And we were just recently introduced because what I decided, that having been in the healthcare field for over 28 years and usually being the only one in the room, you know, I always had to try to prove myself. And no matter how hard I worked, I had to work harder. But it always even went back to my advisor in college, that I was in college. I did everything to get there. But every time I went to see my advisor, who was for my major, he had a list of 13 other majors that I could go into, different fields that I can do. And he would give me the salaries as to drive me into those majors. And I'm like, you're my advisor for physical therapy. Why are you telling me to go into all these other majors? Well, you know, in other words, and I think one day he finally said, well, this field is really not kind of designed for you. And I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. Well, I'm 28 years down the road. I am the director of rehab. And again, I am yet the only Black in the room. And somewhere in there, so I appreciate this conversation. One of the things that in recent events and just searching myself is that I decided that not being active and engaged, a lot of times we're being passive and we allow things to happen. So when I went back to work last week, I sat Monday and I sat Tuesday. And my staff talked about trivia. My staff talked about who wrote this song, who wrote this book. Now, one person mentioned what had happened. And I decided that I was no longer going to sit silently in a room. And I opened up the conversation. And it was because I decided we've got to learn to be uncomfortable, become comfortable being uncomfortable. And if I'm the one to raise my hand and start the conversation, then I can do that. Well, in the conversation, several people started saying, well, this really doesn't happen. You saw this on TV. You're hearing this. You're reading about this. And you yet stand here and say, this really doesn't happen. Thinking that this can't be your life. And tears rolled down my face because I was like, even when you see what you see, you've told yourself the truth for so long, some people, that you believe your truth. And I just decided that, no, I'm going to tell you the truth, and this hurts. When you send, I have a daughter that I delayed giving her a card because I knew sending her out alone was like, what if that stop is about you? What if something happens to you? You know, there's that false sense of security that when you have your children close to you, you protect them, but you can't always do that. So I see it on a personal level. I see it on the professional level. And you were talking about your hair. Every supervisor that I've had, if my curls were tighter and my hair was shorter, I was taken as I was the angry woman. I was always defensive. But when I started doing my own tests, I started wearing looser curls when they came. And I was received so differently. And it's amazing that no matter what you do and how you present yourself, you're still automatically assumed to be a certain way because of what's been taught or what's been assumed because of past experiences. I didn't know if someone wanted to talk, so I can talk as well. So I try to learn to be quiet.
If nothing, I think you kind of pushed us into, I think we've kind of pushed ourselves and you kind of iced it. Unless somebody really wants to keep on this one, I feel like that's a good transition place to go into how is racism systemic or systematic, and kind of start digging into that. It's kind of I think it's kind of a strong leap, but I think it's a leap that we're capable of making from kind of more lighter weight questions to like this real deal stuff. Yeah, and I'll shut up and let whoever wants to go. I'm gonna pull up some stuff that I might share on my screen.
Yeah. Hold on. I can see. Yeah. It's racism systemic. Well, first, I guess I'll just lightly go over because I wanted to say something on the opinion piece, man. It's just so much, man. I first off, let me just say I appreciate everybody for sharing their experience and their perspective on here. You know, this, even though I don't know any of you and we've only been talking for a short period of time, you know, I've already gained some perspective that's been, you know, enlightened. So I appreciate that. I would say, as far as, you know, of course, are all white people racist and all black people, what was all black people suspicious or suspect or something like that? When it comes to that, how I, you know, look at things personally is I always say, I look at a person based on, I'll give them the opportunity to demonstrate character, but having experience of dealing with like different levels of racism, or whether it be conscious or unconscious, or like whether they know it or not, or, you know, I always reserve something. It's a level of, I should say, it's a level of a high expectation, unfortunately. When it comes to, I'm gonna give you an example. Like I have a friend who was a friend, used to be a coworker of mine, and you know, just we used to hang together every day. I mean, I used to be at his house. We used to work in the cubicle together. You know, he used to get in trouble to avoid getting in trouble at the job. He used to use my urine for a drug test. You know, It's a good guy. You know, he got married. I was at his wedding. You know, I was at his in-laws' house. Never had a problem with, never dealt with race or anything like that. A problem with that. And I never felt uncomfortable. But then all of a sudden, like, things changed. Like, he just disappeared, and he stopped picking up my calls, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I had to just go back and try to piece some things together for it to make sense. And you know, I guess I kind of saw how there were just things that I was overlooking, that maybe our friendship wasn't as cool or deep as I thought it was on my side. Yes. Hey, baby. And you know, and I'm not saying I'm basing my opinion off of that one example, because there are many. But I would just say that I think people. Yes. Okay, you want some lunch? Okay. I think a lot of people, especially of, you know, European American descent. Ouch, baby. Probably, I feel like there's more assuming that I have some hostility that is not there, more than there is actually hostility, because I don't have any hostility towards anybody. I think my perspective is more based off of like safety, security, and protecting my emotional well-being more than any type of animus or hate. You know, it's more, I hate to say it because I don't want to admit it as a man, but it's more out of fear and protection than it is out of fear or like hate. It's more self-preservation than it is out of like lashing out at anybody. So I'm glad that, you know, it's a space we can be honest about that, because I'm sure talking to a lot of people, including my family members, that, yes, baby. I don't know. Let me fix it. But I'm sure there are a lot of family members, if I talk to them, they would admit to the same thing. That, so, because I heard, I forgot your name, brother, man. Let me see. Your name was, let me see the participants. Who was the brother with the glasses? What's your name, man?
My name's Michael.
Michael.
Oh, no, sorry, the other guy's
Oh, Alan?
There's two glasses. Yeah, Alan. Okay. I forgot you had glasses too. Yeah, you know, I heard him say, you know, he was hurt when he said, hey, he's from the dirty South, he's okay. I don't think it could have been. I mean, those people very well could have had some type of hate or some type of you know, dislike or whatever the case, based on the fact that you were a quote unquote white man. But I think a lot of people, if they get real with themselves, it's not necessarily a hatred. It's more so of like a fear of and a sense of self-preservation. And I think when you're dealing with people in the hood, or you're dealing with certain disadvantaged areas of Black folks, and they see a white person come, it's not that they hate the white person. It's just they're fearful that, man, this is not going to turn out well.
Josh, quick question. So
yes,
I live on the east side of Pine Bluff, 2 miles from Lowe's in the Broadmoor area, and you bring up this word fear.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead.
I think Alan has a bad connection. It looks like he's frozen.
I was just going to say I agree wholeheartedly with that. That it is. I think that's what my father instilled in me. Yeah, I do. Yeah, my connection's unstable. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so hey, Josh, and I live in a predominantly Black community. So when they see me coming down the street, or when they see me doing something in the yard, you keep mentioning this fear, that there's a fear there. How do we, as white people, help you guys with that fear? Does that make sense? How do we remove that fear from our presence, from your presence?
Can I jump in for just a second? So part of what our work is as white folks is to stop asking Black people what we need to do. That's part of our work. is to stop the emotional labor of trying to unseat white supremacy when it is our responsibility. And I'm sorry, I'm not mad at you, okay? It's not you, Michael. But it's a big picture issue. And my friends and my family who don't look like me are so goddamn tired. So goddamn tired. Because they can't even be in their house and be in relationship with their friends without being asked, oh, what do I need to do, from their white friends and colleagues. It is not their responsibility. It is ours. We have Google, we have books, and we have other white friends that we can talk to about these things.
But none of my
that's the answer. That's the answer. That's what we can do. We can learn more. We can unseat and wrestle with those things within ourselves, so that then, and I'm not mad at you, okay? I'm just hearing it from so many people, and it's frustrating.
I mean, why not go straight to the source instead of reading somebody else's opinion?
Because you're asking them to do more labor.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking for someone's opinion.
No, you're not. You're asking them to wrestle with internal dialogue. You're asking them to think about microaggressions. You're asking them to like, and this isn't everybody, right? Not all Black people are going to think this way. Not all Black people are going to have this experience. But that's what you're asking people to do, is to do your work, to do your homework for you. Can I have the cheat sheet, please? Okay. And there is no cheat sheet.
Okay.
So
can I say something?
Go ahead,
Josh, did you have a response? And I'm going to say something because Michael, hold on, let me go. I will probably say, Krista and Michael, I'm going to say both things, because everybody's experiences are different. The further back you go in the generations, there's a different experience. And I myself had to talk to my elder uncles and different things. And I was saying, but this is not that. And they said, well, have you experienced what I've experienced? And so when I realized that I hadn't, I had to learn to be quiet and listen. But 50-50, you're right. It's easy to ask someone and try to get that. But I actually used a platform on the news, and we had the conversation. And she says, what can we do? Because you're right, Michael. Sometimes if you don't know what to do, then you do sometimes have to go to the source, because no one can tell you how I feel or what I feel. But my answer could be easily also be simple. When she's saying, do the work yourself, how do you want to be seen? How would you like to be treated? And what is it that if I just looked at what I see on the news and what I gather, what has been wrong? What are the wrongs, and then how can I play a role? We can't fix everybody, but you have to start with self. Then you start in your household. Then you start in your neighborhood. You can't go fix another neighborhood until you fix your neighborhood. And so you bridge the gap in your neighborhood. You start bridging that the gap in your community. Then you transcend into your church. Because we're trying to actually fix this whole picture, and we hadn't gotten the first piece of the puzzle in the right place. So that's the whole purpose also for this conversation. So with the anchor, she said when we got through with the segment, she says, I thank you because you helped me, because she says, I know that you're hurting, but I don't know what to say. So sometimes I say nothing, and it makes me appear that I agree with the wrong. And she said, I don't. And so what I simply said is, you send a text. Sometimes you do something without expecting a response. So you may not ask that conversation, but you send a text and say, hey, I see that you're hurting. I don't know. I can only imagine. So sometimes it's just saying, or if you have someone have that conversation and they want to talk and tell you, I'm so angry and I'm so mad and don't say, challenge yourself not to say anything back. Challenge yourself to listen intently. Challenge yourself to say, you know what? I don't have a right to even respond. And so I think that every situation is going to be different, but yes, can you pick up a book? Yes. Can you also see movies? And that's what I know that this particular family, they said they started looking at the movies, and it brought it to reality to them, because when they start looking at the time frames, it's like, this has been going on the last this many years, and we keep thinking that it's better. We keep seeing it and telling ourselves that it's better when it's actually not. But this conversation, no one will leave this conversation the same. Not one person.
And to Krista's point, and a little piggyback on Miss Deanna, for some Black people, it is burdensome to also have this lived experience and then have to explain it or articulate it to the broader culture, because there are receipts. So in an urban context, we call that historical sources. So there are historical sources available through Google, through books, where the broader culture can learn and educate themselves about white supremacy, whether it be in the culture or in the church. There's a lot of information that's out there. So when Black people come to the conversation of race, for me, I want to know, what have you read or educated yourself on prior to having the conversation? Because then you leave Black people a blank canvas to sort of paint this masterpiece where there are other sources available out there. And so you wear out Black people, because we're having this conversation over and over and over again with people who have not done the legwork in searching out the historical sources that can paint a better and more accurate picture in your home. You can look at a book in your home, you can look at on your computer, you got YouTube, you got all of these sources. So specifically, we've been trained in US history, so we've seen it, the point of view of slavery and the Black experience through the eyes of Europeans, but we miss the Black experience through the eyes of an actual Black body or Black person. So I think that's the piece that's missing. You want to get behind the canvas of the Black person and see the society through those eyes, and that'll really expand or give you a fuller picture of the experience of Black people, because we've grown in a society where we've had to code switch. So Black people typically know how to navigate in a dominant culture as well as their culture. But I don't think the broader culture knows how to see the world through the African American eyes, and not just African Americans, Latina, Asian, all of that. So we're talking about systematic racism. So to understand systematic racism, you have to understand that all of those ethnic groups have been excluded from the true American experience. So all of those groups know America to either be terror or to be exclusive of their cultural experience. So they have to assimilate to the broader culture to make the broader culture comfortable. So it is burdensome to have the conversation with some white folks who have not done the work of educating themselves in African American history to see the actual trauma and the fear of why Black people are sort of skeptical when they see white folks, because all they know from history and generations on is terror. So this is what you see when Black folks see the police. So the police, through Black codes, through Jim Crow, they have been known to terrorize Black communities. So we're not saying all of the police is racist, but because this experience we have seen in history and have been passed down through generation by way of systematic racism. So these thoughts goes through the African American mind, because we have experienced it, we've seen it, and it's like repetitive. So it's important, again, to educate yourself on the actual history of Black people in the culture and the church, because that has its own set of issues in church that Black people deal with. You're not accepted in the culture, and you go to a church that is predominantly white, and you're still excluded from even the worship experience. And we're all supposed to be in the body of Christ. So it's like trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. So the work that has to be done is looking through the eyes of history, through the eyes of Black people. So I'm sorry that was too long.
And Crandon, before you move on, I'm sorry, man. I had to step away from the Zoom for a little bit, and I thought I heard Mike responding, and I don't know if he responded yet, but I was wondering if he did, because would he mind just summarizing what he said, or if not, I would love to hear his response.
So my original question was talking to you, Josh, asking about fear. Now, I've seen movies, I've read some books, I've done some conversations, but every person is different. So I get that we need to educate ourselves. I completely understand all that. But still, even having all that education in myself, if I'm still perceived as being a threat to a person, what can I do on my end, me personally, and my kids personally? What can they do on their end so they don't appear as a threat to another African? And I'm getting a head shake. I don't know I don't know how to phrase the question. Even with the movies I've watched, even with the reading I've watched, I know that there's an issue. I know that. Please understand that. But how do we not, Crandon, you're sharing your screen, dude. How do we not come across as a threat? And I think that's a valid question, even without.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think. I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't think that it's necessarily anything you can do initially. Like that. I think most people, a lot of especially Black folks may have that thought initially. But I'm saying, like, what you can do, like, upon making contact or upon having an interaction. I mean, because what bias a person has initially, that you have no business with that. You have no control over that as far as right now. Like, there has to be a long-term systemic change, and you talking about undoing the history and undoing the lived experience of people's however 20, 30 years long worth of programming and experience. But as far as upon making contact, I would say you could just demonstrate that, how that your cause is genuine or whatever. And I mean, like I said, I always reserve some level of skepticism, but I always initially give people the opportunity to be able to try to evaluate their character, to see, okay, is this person genuine? Because, like, it's hard. I mean, I have a little bit of understanding. Like, it's hard even for a white person to understand how to operate in America if you have good intentions, because there's so many underlying things that you're not necessarily taught or don't know how to necessarily relate to in regards to the lived experience of somebody who's on the other end of racism. So I have an understanding, and I try not to be so harsh when I see people that have a good intentions. But as far as being able to overcome somebody's initial skepticism or whether they want to admit it or not, fears, it's not really much you can do about that. And I don't blame anybody for that, because that's just how it is. But I just like to see if people are if they have good intentions, when we do have the interaction.
So it comes back to character.
There you go.
Okay.
Part of what, like, I see happening is that, as uncomfortable, Mike, do you go by Michael or Mike?
Either or.
What's your preference?
My wife calls me Michael.
So not Michael, Mike. Does she call you that when she's mad, or does she just call you that? Like,
she's always called me that.
I never use my partner's name unless, like, I really need to get his attention. Part of our work in unseating systemic oppression
right,
particularly systemic racism, is to start to be okay with the discomfort that in our lifetime it's not going to happen.
right,
We have to do the work to get it there.
right,
That in our lifetime, folks who don't know us, particularly folks of color who don't know us, have every right to have a distrust of us.
sure.
And
Sure.
it's like it's like, so I'm bisexual. So it's like coming out of the closet for everybody, right? We have to prove through relationship, not through conversation, not through like anything, but through like actually getting to know somebody, that we're worth trust. And that's how we change it. And that in voting and like lobbying and advocacy and making the phone calls and sharing relationship with other white folks to make sure they're starting to get this. And you know, there is no it to get, right? Like this is a lifelong journey. And like I said on my video, the more I know, the more I know I don't know.
I really do agree with that, Krista. It starts with relational, getting at the dinner table and having the tough conversations with family, friends of other ethnic backgrounds. I know before we talked about hair and things like that, and a lot of people say that about my hair. And so that is a way for me to educate them about African American hair and those kind of things, because I think the broader culture doesn't know really a lot about Black culture. So it is a way, you know, locks can be, like Crandon said, convenience. It can be an act of resistance of not assimilating with the broader culture, meaning not having permed straight hair that looks more European versus keeping your kinky locks or textured hair that you were born with. So all of these things, I think, as Chris is pointing out, it's relational. You're getting not only to know the person's experience racially, but you're getting to know the person for just the person, you know, just who that person is, what they like, what they don't like, you know, and then you'll find out that some of their fears are just like yours. Some of their loves of, you know, different shows on TV are just like yours. So you're basically humanizing the person, whereas media has often dehumanized Black people. So it has to start with those, like she said, relationships, genuine relationships, and just, you know, just trying to get to know the person for who they are, you know. So.
Right. I'm gonna let everybody finish commenting on this one. I think we're at a good stopping point. We've made some great strides, so you guys can continue on this one, but I won't go to another question, and then we'll wrap this up.
I just want to offer.
Hold on.
For
go ahead,
real
Krista.
quick. Yeah. So, Mike, like, I'm happy to have these conversations with you, and I promise I won't be so rough, right? Like, I just, it hurts my heart when I hear it, that somebody else is being asked to be re-traumatized, and that's how I hear when I ask my Black friends, like if I ask them something without asking if they're okay if I ask a heavy question, right? Like, are you in a place where you can do some emotional labor right now? Okay. Because I've got some questions and I've looked for some answers and I just can't find them. It's just it's not making sense to me. But part of that, I think, is having conversations with other white folks who are also on this journey. Right. And therefore lifting some of that burden from Black folks that, you know what, like, home should be a safe space.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
So reach out to me. We're friends on Facebook now. So, I mean, I'm happy to have FaceTime, Zoom conversation, whatever. Yeah. You know, I'm invested in making sure that we get healthy as a society, and part of that is you know, unseating that within ourselves.
There's a huge portion of my heart that wants to see this issue fixed, and I know that it starts with me and how I walk and how I treat my fellow humans. And I'm going to say your name all kinds of wrong, and I'm sorry for that. I'm Alicia. I'm going to say it wrong. How do you say that?
LaShawn.
LaShawn. I'm sorry. I'm not good with names atypically. Part of that is, one, I have a speech issue. The other part is I have a head injury. Thank you, Army. But You're right. We've all been dehumanized in one form, shape, or another, and we have to remember that we're all part of the same race, the human race. And in that, I think that's the first thing that we have to look at is like, oh, when I look at you, I see your skin color, but beyond that, you're human. And I think we've forgotten that. At least a majority of us have. And there's a few of us that are starting to come back and go, oh, hey, they bleed red just like I do. They have feelings just like I do. They all like pizza at some point or another. It just may be a different kind of pizza.
Right. VJ.
So I was listening in the background. I was doing my work now, and I felt like, okay, I need to at least offer something because I didn't want to be a lurker in the back and just listen to folks do the labor. And I wanted to also share partly because of Michael's question, right? Like, so Krista was, so just as an observer from the outside, who's like just like passively listening, the amount of labor that, like, I just had to kind of reflect back what I saw happening in the background, because I couldn't even minimize the Zoom because I was recording it. I couldn't minimize it. And then I thought, okay, I'm just going to get involved, because not getting involved means complicit, being complicit in the issue, right? And I identify as South Asian. And Michael's question is relevant, not just to white folks, right? It's often portrayed as white folks, but it's also there. The same questions are being asked by Asians, by Latinos, because anti-Blackness is every freaking where, right? And we actually don't even understand that, right? So Michael, the question that you asked, well, why can't I go to the source, right? I have been in those same places because I have gone and asked Black folks, hey, can you explain a little bit more about this, right? Can you imagine how many people in a given day, how many Michaels in a given day will reach out to LaShawn or to
Right.
to ask the same freaking question?
Okay.
Right? That is the labor that Krista is talking about.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem responding to one Michael a day. But if I have to respond to 24 Michaels for every hour, I am done for that day. I don't have anything else to give. I need a long vacation, right? So when I think about that from the context of being Asian, where I go through my own shit of anti-Asianness that happens in the community, and I also engage in anti-Blackness, I need to figure it out on my own. Nobody's going to give me the cheat sheet that Krista was talking about. Nobody's going to give it to us. We all have to do our own work. So it's called self-work. And I think you talked about, you contemplate about this stuff. And part of this is also, I think you were talking about we all bleed the same. I wish that was true. Biologically, it might be true, but sociologically, it is not. Right? If not, we would see so many more George Floyds as white people being killed by cops. Right? That doesn't happen. So to come to a colorblind society, that is not where we start. Right? And I mean, I know that's not what you meant, but even by framing it that way, right, is aggravating to folks that are folks of color when they hear that. Because to tell somebody that, you know what, we all have to be the same, and I know that it's all going to be same, means that you erase Blackness from the conversation. But the point of this conversation is to start with Blackness, right? So sometimes even framing the question, it's easy to ask a question and say, I'm ignorant, I want to learn, but even that can be traumatic to the person who's receiving it. Right? And to me, when I see that, and I teach graduate students, and when I see that happening, like I'm teaching a course right now next fall, I'm supposed to teach a multicultural issues and higher ed course. We had to create 2 sections. There are 30 students in the group that I'm teaching. I'm one of the faculty. I created another section with another white faculty member. because there was some tension in the group. Guess how the students selected which sections they were going to go to? All the students of color on my class, all the white students on the other section. And these are students who want to talk about society and social justice and think of themselves as being activists, right? So everybody's going to come in with good intent, and we're going to have some challenges in terms of how we get comfortable talking about these issues. And part of it is, yeah, we have to build relationships, but you're going to have to build relationships with anytime I meet another Black person, just because I know Brandon doesn't mean that the other Black person owes me anything. I have to build that trust and relationship, right? And so with this group, it's a pretty small group of really interested folks who want to address this. But Michael, you're gonna, when you step out of the room and get out in the real world again, every Black person is going to look at you and be like, no, okay, this guy, can't trust him. Because that is what's happened to all of us, right? And you have to build those relationships. And I'm going to get off my soapbox in a second, but to me, those are the same questions I asked before I did the self work. I'm in a place where I'm constantly doing it. I'm able to understand it, but I also have I place less of a burden on my Black cousins, because otherwise they're going to have to constantly keep doing it with white folks, with Asians, with Latinos, biracial folks. And I think LaShawn mentioned earlier, Black folks are all not the same, right? And there are also Black folks who need some preaching, right? So I think so for you to come into the space and ask some questions, because easy, I'm going to ask you to take a moment, step back, because and again, this was created as a safe space for people to ask questions, so I get the point there. But even within that, it just hurts me that people that I don't know had to do the labor of explaining it to you, right? And that's problematic in several ways.
Okay. I can see that, and I definitely want to do better. I need to do better, obviously, and I'm sorry for that. I wasn't trying to add weight to anybody at all. Please understand that. I'm just looking for answers.
I don't know if you all have...
No, you good. Can I say something real quick, bro? I just want to say, that it's something that you shouldn't feel any guilt or anything like that for. This is America. America is a country built on the legacy of slavery and the atrocities of all of these things, Black codes, Jim Crow law, and I mean that's a generational trauma and a generational trauma that's been put on Black folks of America, those that descend from slavery, and it's the generational trauma also that's been put on the white society, quote unquote white society, because that's now a burden that those who actually want to do good work, you have to overcome that legacy. Like it's a more of an uphill battle. So if you do really, I'm not saying if directly at you, because I believe that you do have the great intentions, but for those who have great intentions, it should make, when you do get the breakthrough, when you do earn the trust of the community, when you do help the community get results that that they can achieve to live a better life or get whatever the goals that you want to get accomplished, it should be that much more rewarding, because you actually did some serious work. You actually were able to overcome that legacy and that burden. So I just hope you keep that in the back of your mind as you continue to do that work.
I just shared a link to, it's a pirated copy, but if you were to buy it, please buy it. It's it's something that a student shared with me, but I have a copy of it, and it's called Color of Fear, and it's exactly what we're doing here today, right? It's actually, well, there are no females in this video. It's all male. So that's one problem with it. but it's actually called The Color of Fear. And it's, Michael, it's exactly the kinds of questions you're asking, and people responding to each other's biases, right? It's interracial too. So and I think like what Josh was saying, I don't think there's need to apologize here, but because then it recenters you, right? It recenters you and your white guilt and all of that. That is not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is talk about anti-Blackness. The point of, like, I'm, at least in my head, that's the point of the conversation, right? So I'll stop and I'll go back to doing my work. But thank you for letting me listen to y'all. I love the conversation.
Oh yeah.
Miss Deanna wanted to say
You
something.
definitely added value, man. I appreciate it. Definitely. Hey, Miss Dina, you should be good. Can you unmute yourself, or I'll unmute you? Okay.
Okay, so I sat here and I'm listening, and it reminded me of when I went to a survivors of sexual abuse meeting, and we all had the same common experience, which was great. And when I went in there, some people were telling their story for the first time. Some people were telling their story 50 years later. I was further along in my walk. And so my responses were always different and always seemed a little poised. And in fact, I think the facilitator was kind of offended, like, why are you here? Did you come to teach my class? And I really came to receive. And Michael, that's the experience that with you. I'm sitting here and I'm listening. It didn't hurt me as much that you asked that question, because I've been having that conversation. And I'm that person, come to me and ask me, and that's who I am. Everybody has a different love language. Everyone does things different. The fact that you're on here, awesome. The fact that you asked that question, because most people would have been quiet and never asked that question or typed it in the chat. But you put a face and a voice with that question, and that represented a whole. So for me, it didn't offend me to that level, but I do have to say, well, it doesn't mean it didn't offend, or not offend, move certain people. But for me, you definitely connect with me. Let's have the conversation. But I realize that everybody's walk is different. And sometimes when you establish those relationships, you'll get to see that I'm in a place where I can ask this. And it's not going to ask. And sometimes we have questions, I used to think my fight was only for equality. Equality. But what I had to realize, before you can seek equality, you got to seek equity. We fail to look for equity because we're seeking equality. And equality it's almost unattainable if you don't deal with the equity. And that's what we got to deal with. So starting looking for what is equity. You got somebody that tell 3 people, look over that fence. Somebody's 3 feet tall, somebody's 7 feet tall, somebody's 4 feet tall. Well, that one trait it's not going to help everyone. But if you take the time out to get to know what each person is lacking, and you facilitate that, you now have leveled the playing field. And so I want to say, I commend you and everyone that's been on this call, because I will take away, and this has been recorded. I hope to sit back and watch it again, because everyone that brings something should take something back. And then to say, why did Michael's question bother me? I'm a root cause. I'm a transformational life coach. So I'd say, what in there, anything that you resist, something persists. So why did that bother me? Had no one asked me that question before, had nobody challenged me to go deeper, had nobody stood face to face to say that. So sometimes we have to look at what was it that triggered something in us. And so for me, it just allowed me to see, well, I can sit in that room and have that conversation, because you can ask me, because I'm an open book and I'm going to share. I don't have a problem with sharing. And I 50% accept that you may not be willing to accept my answer, but 50% is I'm secure in giving that answer. Thank you.
Okay, this is great. I don't know if you guys saw what I put in the chat. What happened over here? Just one of those things. Kind of like what Ms. Dina said. Stuff coming against you, and so we've been fine the whole time. And then right there, as we were getting into it really good, my power in my whole house flickered and knocked out my Wi-Fi and everything. So that's where I went for a while.
Mining cryptos?
But as say it again. I don't know if that was intended for me. But a little bit ago, I posted when I was sharing my screen, I was trying to get into where we talked about
Hey, Crandon.
systemic racism, but what we're gonna do is stop there because we've now, it may be a few of us, it may be everybody. If you guys, I think I'm frozen again. Okay. VJ, I can hear you. You said something.
Your video and your audio are stalling.
Okay. That may just be my internet connection, but I'm wrapping up right now. Hopefully it'll catch up. So what I want to do, VJ, if you would just end it out for me so that it's not crazy out for me. I'm gonna mute out.
Did he ask me to end the conversation?
Yeah, he said end it out for him. He's frozen.
Well, all I can say is thank you for letting me be part of this. And I mean, I had hosted a seminar like this for 300 people the other day, and I posted saying I learned a lot of things about how to host a Zoom call for 300 people talking about these issues. So Karen had reached out and said, hey, can you help me with this? So thank you for allowing me to be part of it in that way. But also, I think just the richness of the conversation. I think it's important for all of us to have this. And I think, Deanna, your comment about, what triggers, do we all have about these conversations, right? And I do contemplative work. And for me, I have to learn how to be okay with the discomfort, because where there's dissonance, there's growth. And in whatever way it is, right? So thank you for pointing that out too, for each of us. And I'll let I'll let Crandon. I'll record this. I'll end this conversation, and I'll send the link to Crandon, and hopefully he can he'll email it to everybody. But thank you for for being here and for your spirits to do this work. So have a good one.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for putting up with me. I appreciate it.
Bye, Michael. We love you.
Thanks, guys. It's been great. You guys are very special.
Till next one.
Love y'all.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Great discussion, y'all. Yep. Peace and love.